Yo, what's up guys? Let's rank all of the new units of the Lord of the Rings collab. I will do some individual videos showcasing some units out there later on, but this is just a showcase of where it will be good, how it will be good, how it will be used, all of those kind of good things, and then just go from there. So I will also be putting them left to right, like who is most OP, that kind of stuff. We have a few different tiers. I think I will hold on those tiers, like one just straight up OP. We have a good, will be meta in the current state, so that is something that's right away usable at the current state. Then also usable, but needs a buff to become meta. So if something is like, it's okay-ish and it's very niche here and there, but something like that. And then we also have a not good, but easy to buff. Or I'm not really sure about this tier, but something like along the lines that's not just straight up like fodder slash food slash bad, but something that is like a little bit more in between. It's like maybe very niche usage or something like that. But let's just see from there. So first of all, we have Frodo. So Frodo, we're all familiar with. I do have all of the skills over here as well. Main thing that he's used for is just his attack power increase that he can be used. We already seen it in a Giants team. I've seen some people use it in the Temple of Chaos. I have seen some people try it in RTA. We do also have the RTA statistics over here. In G3, it was sitting at a 16.7% win rate in about 6 matches. And over here, it's like a 41% win rate. Is not really an RTA unit. Would not really use it for anything RTA related or even Siege or anything like that. Definitely not the kind of unit for there. It's definitely more of a PvE only unit, but is good and will be meta in current state because of those PvE things. So it's definitely good over there. Then we have the Gandalf on water, which is definitely a very interesting unit. Let's see where I do have my Gandalfs. Gandalf's over here. That is the Gandalf that does have the shield on the S1, shield on the S2, but also gain attack power when an ally is hit with the shield. Apparently does not work with shield runes, but it's definitely a very strong unit and people have been using that in RTA. So let's look at the win rate of that unit in RTA. In RTA currently, it's already being used a good bit of, like 1% in the current meta where it's only been released for just a little bit of time. And it's already at a 52.6 win rate, which is incredibly high in Guardian. In Guardian 3, it's even higher than that. So in all ranks, this thing is having an insane win rate. So arguably the strongest unit out there for the collab that we have right now. So where do we place that? We place him on the OP tier. I think that he's definitely worth the OP tier and he will be really, really strong throughout the meta. It's also, we're still very hard on a Venton meta. He is super hard countering the Venton meta. So it might even be, we had a podcast yesterday or 2 days ago from posting this video, where Pavik said he pulled this unit, he started spamming it all the time, and all of the Ventons are pretty much free wins, which I can definitely understand. You don't even have to go for all kinds of other shield and put turn 2 units with it. Just this thing against a Venton with your common units is already strong enough. So the Water Gandalf might be the winner of this whole patch so far, but let's see how far we get from there. Because we also have the Fire Gandalf. Fire Gandalf is the one with the strip. Let's first look at its skills. For stripping, he does have a decent rate. It's a 40% chance with 3 times hits. This multipliers on his skill 3 are pretty similar to that of a Carnal. Does have a little bit less HP than the Carnal itself. Does also have an S2 that maybe does not really fit with the whole mindset of being like a little bit of HP scaling, a little bit of attack scaling. But it is a strip nevertheless with also a cleanse and an attack power buff. But we also have attack power buff with a Joe gun already. However, this is 3 turns, so does give a little bit more addition in there. But let's see how it would work in RTA. In RTA, we're looking at a 50 win rate, 41 win rate over here, 42 win rate. Yeah, it's definitely looking at something that is usable, but something that might not be that strong. It does have a crit rate lead. I could see the value of it maybe being used in some siege offenses here and there. But I would say is usable, but would need a buff to become meta. I don't really claim this a meta unit just yet. He's definitely good. He's definitely usable. But if he wants to become meta, he needs a little bit more that way. Then we go for the next one, which is going to be the wind one, which is the one that we thought was going to be most OP. And that is the one where if allies have shield, you gain immunity to the attack bar decreasing effect and you remove the harmful effects on allies whenever you create a shield. Big difference between this and the water one is that the water one also provides a little bit of healing. And that little bit of healing adds a lot more than just being immune to attack bar pushbacks. And also him getting the turns itself to provide those shields is a little bit harder, where the other one is a little bit easier to get a lot of turns in, get a lot of those shields in, and be super annoying that way. And we also do tend to see that back in his win rate. So if we check the win rate in Guardian 3, 40%, yeah, it's just like a bit of 40% out there. So where we first thought like, ooh, on paper this sounds really strong, he does struggle a little bit to get his turns in, whereas the water one is a lot easier to get his turns in. So I would claim that this one is somewhat usable, but to be honest, I am actually going to place it over here. Where people expected him to be there, me included, I actually do, after looking at people using it a bit, I do kind of put him over there. I feel that the fire one is even stronger, and the water one is actually the one that's really, really good. So then moving on next to the light one. What do we have on the light version of it? Light Gandalf. That is the one that has the shields on 1 and 2. But then we also have the skill 3, which is kind of a Nigong. It is a cleanse, it is an attack bar increase, and it's a damage offset. I did hear from some people that if this unit is stunned, it just simply doesn't work, which is a pretty interesting fact as well. So Vanessa, for example, if Vanessa's stunned, it still revives. Apparently, if this thing is stunned, it doesn't revive anymore. I did not test it myself, but that sounds pretty bad in the first place. I also don't think it's having that much of success. Oh, it's actually G3. No, it's not the worst. It's not the worst, actually. I was expecting it to be doing a little bit worse. I think it is very specific niche usages where you can actually use this unit. And I do think that the water one is a lot stronger. But I would give him probably... I wanted to say this, but his win rates are looking a little bit more. But I don't think you can use him that often. But I think I put him all the way at the usable, but above to become meta. I put him all the way on the left. I think he's the strongest one in this tier. But I don't think he's that much more than that. Then moving on to the Dark Gandalf, which is an interesting one. How much do you have for win rates? Well, you barely have any pick rates altogether. And there's a really good reason for that. And let me show you that reason. So if we go to the Gandalf on Dark... This is the one with the nuking skill, which still has the shields by max HP nonsense over there. But then we look at the multipliers. Like, whatever the skill does, 2 times hit. I thought it was a 1-time hit, which is even way worse. But and then you can, like, you ignore the death resistance and you can stun, blah, blah, blah. So, 2.4 multiplier. Well, let me show you this. Hunwol. Hunwol, what is your multiplier? Hunwol is a 5.5 multiplier. We already claimed that Hunwol has absolutely no damage, and this is close to 900. It's 22 of 900. How about you over here? You're even lower on that. So you have lower multipliers than a Hunwol and lower attack than a Hunwol. They did this unit dirty, man. They have to go for plus 80% damage on this unit rather than plus 8% damage. This unit is straight up bad fodder, man. It is easily buffed by putting more damage to it, but then again, even if you put more damage to it, it doesn't really add the same level as like a Hunwol or a Grogan or any of those kind of nukers. So he's straight up bad fodder. He's not even an easy buff. He needs like 4 or 5 buffs to be really good. So that's kind of the thing out there for him. Sorry for the people that pulled him, but at least your LD is that shit that he will get buffed. Like, that's... Like, easy buff doesn't mean he doesn't get a buff. If he's bad and fodder, it's more likely for them to get a buff. But don't talk about the Dark Nina. But we might see in a future balance special. Let's see about that. So first of all, we have the Legolas. I don't think that the water Legolas is used ever pretty much on anything. It does have a nice skill 3, but it's most of the time with those 4 stars. It's just very simple. 4-star is just fodder and food for the skill ups of the other ones, just to make them easy skillable. That's pretty much all there is to it. Then we have the Fire Legolas, which a lot of people have been kind of glazing. I did test him in a different video, will be released in a few days. He is pretty decent, but there's one really big issue to this unit. He has a 2 to 5 hit times on his skill 1. But that also means that his passive can hit 2 or 5 times. So you can decrease the attack bar and absorb the attack bar by 30% if you land all. But you can also do it by 75%. Plus your damage output is also times 2.5. That is way too much RNG for me to actually fully like this unit. And I did do a in-depth video on the Legolases later, so you will see it over there. But my verdict on this one is usable. I will place him over here. usable, but needs a buff to become meta. He's definitely not strong enough to already be meta. And let's look at the win rates of him. I don't expect that high. Yeah, 45's okay. In G3, it's kind of okay-ish. But in the lower ranks, we definitely do see that he's not doing that well. So if he gets the enough additional damage artifacts in and that kind of stuff, maybe he can kind of do a thing in the right match. But in most cases, I feel like this unit kind of needs a slight tweak on the skill 1. And I think the whole family can use a slight tweak on the skill 1 for him to actually become meta and become good. And also, I would say maybe he's more of a siege unit than RTA unit, because you single target focus something down. And single target focusing something down is easier when there's 3 on the field rather than there's 4 on the field. So that's just my verdict on that one. Which means that I will put him in usable, but would need a little bit of a buff to become meta. Then we have the Wind one. Did already do the video on the Wind one. Wind one has the perfect AI for going S2 into S3, which makes him somewhat interesting if he gets a buff for PvE. But I think he is already usable in Siege. He's already usable in RTA, because this is the one where we do have the good bit of damage on the skill 3. I think if he gets the buff where he doesn't get an attack lead but a speed lead, he would be instantly meta and he would be really, really good. But until that point, I think he's just good. In the current state of meta, I will place him over here. He's definitely, he's usable, he's good. Doesn't really need a change, but if he gets that one up of a change, it would be really good. Personally, where I would use him the most right now is probably just a Tiana plus some armor breaker plus this thing in a siege offense or an arena offense where he has some speed scanning, attack scanning. You only need a strip and a defense break, which are pretty easy things to obtain. And you don't have to go for attack buff. You don't have to go for speed buffs or anything of that. He provides that by himself. So therefore, I would say he's already good and will be used in current state. However, if he wants to be actually good for RTA and good for like a best in slot for things, then he would need a buff, and then he also immediately becomes over here. Like if he gets the speed buff on the lead, or not the speed buff, but if he gets the speed lead on arena, he immediately goes to OP. Still below this one, I would say, but he immediately goes to OP. Moving on to the next one over here, Light Legolas is an interesting unit as well. Light Legolas is the unit that has the, whenever anyone on your team crits, you get bar. But that does also mean I placed this next to a Maximilian in a video I'll showcase later. Next to a Maximilian, Maximilian has 4 times hit, 3 targets in Siege. This thing gets 120 bar. You can put this on a rage set with 0 speed and he's gonna do insane damage. I think he's better there than he's good in RTA. I've seen some people try him RTA. It's not bad, but then you kind of get to the point, it's like, you're kind of bruising with additional damage artifacts, and you hope to give him a lot of turns, but he has a little bit of protection to himself, but also the protection he gives to himself is just extra defense. It's kind of like a Misty, but Misty gets a lot of speed. It's kind of like a Light Huarang, but Light Huarang gets a lot of speed. This thing just gets more defense, and he actually actively has to get some units to crit. So you already have to be in the driving position to actually utilize this passive, whereas the passive of a Misty or a Light Huarang works when you're on the back foot. And that is the big difference on this unit. So when you're already winning, this thing is winning you even more. Yeah, do you really need that? For Siege, it's actually kind of nice because this thing can do a really good damage bit on Siege. But I would say for him, I would place him as a high one on usable, but would need a buff to become meta. And usable for RTA, I would say RTA, small usable. Siege, pretty darn strong. In Siege, it's actually a really strong unit, and I will showcase that in a video later. But then you actually want to go on a way slower speed build, and you want to go heavy critters on the 2 side units, and it's more of a sniping comp rather than anything. But usable, but would need a buff to become meta. I think I actually placed it 1 below that. Then we have the Dark one, which I am not too sure if anyone... I personally actually did not test this at all. To me, it feels like a weaker version of an Elven Ranger. Maybe he actually does do good damage on this. I have absolutely no clue. I actually did not really test this, so it's more of a guess rather than anything. In RTA, definitely not used as much, but I feel like that he is a... Yeah, I feel like he's kind of like this, to be honest. I don't really feel his value on that at all. Moving on next to the Aragorn, starting off with the Aragorn on water, which is seemingly a pretty interesting unit. Does have the cooldown decrease, immunity, shields, and shield by your max HP. And then also this skill for team up with an attack buff, so you're lowering the cooldown of your most nuking target. If you place that on, let's say, a Sonya or something. Sonya lower cooldowns, give attack buff to the Sonya. Definitely very nice unit. So let's see what we have for win rates on that. 54 win rate, low on the pick rate, but decent win rate throughout in higher ranks. So definitely a pretty solid unit right there. And I think I'll place that towards the good and will be used in current meta. But I don't feel like he's as strong as the Water Gandalf. I think Water Gandalf also is a lot more spammable. And this one is, it is nice and niche, but it is also still lacking a little bit of, it's not really doing any damage by itself. And it's not really providing that much. Like, for example, if you place a Wusa in his position, sure, you don't have the S3 for lowering cooldowns, but you do have a lot of value for other things. So I'm kind of in between this and this, but I would say I think he's the highest value of like the good and will be used in current map. But I don't necessarily think he's on an OP stage just yet. Can also be used in Siege. He definitely has a whole bit of strong pairs that he can be used. So also interesting to see. There's not too many units. Like if we check the other collabs already had so many units in the lower tiers. This case, not as much. But then we're gonna move on to the next one, which is the Aragorn, which is a 4-star. I think, yep, this is one of those 4-stars. This one really doesn't have too much value, and I would say you could maybe use it here and there, but I think for now he's just probably somewhere over here. He's not really used. We have the Fire one. Fire one is the one with the defense, and then during defense he goes for higher damage on his counters. His counter is actually the multiplier on this. You can barely read it, but it's a little bit higher than a Chandra, but the Chandra has a guaranteed crit in there and has a little bit more base HP. So that is kind of the comparable on that, but you do have the recovery and the counter. So its damage output is not that bad. He does also have a chance to land brand on it. But I don't think the unit has that much value for where you would say it's like, oh, this is actually going to do a lot of work in like an RTA kind of scenario. It's more of something that I would see towards Siege. And he does also have the guild lead, but it's resistant. So I would say for him, you can use it, but I think it's more of like a not good. But if they add something more to the passive or anything like that, I think it could be pretty decent. Well, actually not that good, but yeah, maybe the easy buff is not really a thing for it. Not that great, but okay-ish. I think I'll give it this. Like, it's not that great, but it's okay-ish. Like, it can be used. Moving on to the next one, which is going to be the light one of the Aragorns. Light Aragorn is increase your attack bar by 10% when an ally excluding yourselves is attacked. Increase your attack bar by 50% excluding yourself when an ally fails on inability effects. It is a 4-star. I haven't really seen anyone use this just yet. It does also have the protect skill, like the defense skill right here. I'm not too sure if people are actually going to be using that, but I think that you can probably use this already. I don't think it's that bad. So I'll place it over there. Then we go for Aragorn Dark, which I think is the most sought of LD throughout this whole thing. Mainly because we have the Band of Blades on the S2, which is the same as the water one. And then we also have Oathbreakers, which is AoE reset 3 times, max HP damage scaling, and we also have the attack speed decrease. Plus we do reset the target's attack bar that we do click on itself, which is definitely pretty strong. Multiplier is similar to a Carnal S3. I did try it with high crit damage for a video. Did not really seem that interesting for a crit damage build. It's more of additional damage artifact kind of style build for just high HP. But let's see what the win rate on this unit is. I have actually no clue. We got a 60% win rate in G3. It's not that many matches just yet. But wow, those are pretty darn high win rates throughout. That's actually stronger than expected. Wow. There are a few flaws to this unit where, for example, the Band of Blades, it does hit the ally that you team up with will always attack earlier than he lands his Death Break. So the Death Break part is nice for the things that come after, but only for the things that come after. Plus, this doesn't have that much scaling because it's attack scaling, and he's an HP type unit. However, I think he goes all the way to the top. he is incredibly strong, and I think he will remain incredibly strong. So that's definitely one of those. Then we go into the golems, which in all honesty are more of a guesstimation rather than actually knowing, because I did not really test them that much. But let's just see what we have for the golems. It's also where we have a full 4-star family. None of them have a lead yet, so if it's a 4-star and it has a guild lead, it could be a something, but I think that this whole family kind of ends up at the fodder/bad, to be honest. So the first one is the stealth. The stealth is actually not that bad. It does do 100% extra damage, and therefore they can actually do a good bit of damage. I've seen some golems actually smack really, really hard, especially the dark one. So, and then we have increased the attack bar of an ally by 50 and grants vampire attack speed for 2 turns. I can kind of see the value on this one, but not great, but okay-ish. Like maybe some weird siege offense 4-star-ish. I can kind of see the value, like the stealth mechanic is definitely pretty decent, but is it crazy good? No. Fire one, what do we have on the fire one? Fire one is the one with the nasty strike, so that is the one that has like the more Tima or like the more follow-up mechanics on itself. Definitely a decent bruiser unit. Does also give itself immunity if you start with the HP over 100. So is definitely a bit of a bruiser unit out there. So I would say that he also seems to be something that could be used already, but I don't really see anyone going for it specific that much. The wind one does have the clover skill as well. And we have the My Precious, which is you steal buffs and then resets cooldown of this skill if you did steal it. But then this skill itself goes on cooldown still for a longer time. I feel like that's definitely a little bit one of the weaker ones, but I think I place him over there. Then looking at the light and dark golem, which probably more people did pick up themselves. So this is similar style as the fire one. But then we have a strip chance on the passive part. So either we can strip something or we can stun something. That's pretty much the main thing to this unit. Not really sure. I think it can be used, but not really too sure about it. Because this one is also, I think with the fire one or the water one, you can use the right elements in like a siege offense hit. But yeah, it's still just okay-ish. And then we go for dark. Dark one is actually having a good bit of damage. The only thing that he is kind of weird for is you get a full attack, or you get a 100% bar for using this skill. You get a additional turn for this skill. So the 100 bar is different than the additional turn, because if something is 110 bar, they will take the turn. But it's also, let's say you start off with your attack power. You get the additional turn. Your attack power is going to be 1 turn left. Then you go for the stealth. But then this thing is already, you waste 1 turn on this. But also if you do it the other way around, you waste 1 turn of your stealth. Which in both cases is a little bit weird. And it feels a little bit off. But then again, this unit does do a good bit of damage. I've seen some people test this with damage and he's been hitting like 50Ks on a death break on a squishy build. Which is not that bad. So I definitely do think I bring him here to the top. Maybe even over here. But I would say, no, actually I would bring him to here. I think he's fair to be brought up there. He is usable already. He does have his niche. But he would need a buff to become meta. So if we're looking at this tier list, comparing that to previous collabs, these units are a lot better. We have 2 units straight up OP. We have 3 units straight up very usable already. And I would say even for those 3, maybe even those 4 are already very usable. Well, actually for this whole pile, there's a lot of them already usable. And yes, like especially the ones towards the end, this is like the part where it's like, this is usable and it's decent to good. This isn't like it's usable, but it's kind of like, yeah, do you really want to use it? You probably have a better replacement. That's kind of a thing right there. So maybe even like you could put a tier below. I definitely do think that there is a difference between these 3, and then it's like, okay, can be used, but easy replaced, or but there's many things better, something like that. I think that this is a more fair tier list to make a distinguish between these and these. And then, yeah, I think that's fair. So that's my tier list for this. Let me know in the comments if you do agree or disagree. If you pulled these units at the top, definitely do give them a try. Well, everyone has the Frodo, which is also, it's the very first collab units since Ken, which Ken was the very first one, which is the Bayonetta or something, the Shadow Claw, which was the only collab unit that's still super commonly used. Frodo is going to be the next one that's super commonly used, I think, for quite a while. And let's just see what happens to some of these units, because especially for the LDs that are really bad, most of the time they do tend to buff at least one of the two LDs. But then it's the question, did you have the Light Nina, which is not crazy good, or did you have the Dark Nina, which is still absolute ass? Well, guys, thanks a lot for watching for this one. See you as always in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab for the guide video archive, which contains all of the guides that you might need. Hope to see you there.